My intention for us today is, of course, to celebrate conscious entrepreneurship. And in line with that, I'm so grateful to introduce you to our first speaker, the amazing Kati Mayfield, who I have the honor of calling my best friend. And okay, this is where the tears come up. I have seen her journey for the past 5-6 years growing FloweRescue, which you'll soon hear what a beautiful organization and community she has built. And it's an honor to share the journey with amazing people like Kati. Come on.
Thank you, darling. Let's see. All right. Good morning. Thank you so much, Minna, for bringing us here today, for creating this incredible community for us, and for being always such a hype woman for me. It's really an honor to be here today to speak. As I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, I was thinking about where my flower journey started, back to about 15 years ago, and I was thinking that if you had told me 15 years ago that I would be here in Helsinki at a Conscious Entrepreneurs Festival speaking, I would not have believed you, for a few reasons, I think. The first of those is because 15 years ago I would have said, Helsinki? What? How many of you can relate to this? How many of you would have seen yourselves here 15 years ago? Or maybe would not have seen yourselves here 15 years ago? So that's surprise number one for me. Surprise number two is the word conscious used in this context. I think 15 years ago I would have made some silly joke about, oh, can you really do entrepreneurship when you're not conscious? We all know this is not work that you can do in your sleep. But unfortunately, a lot of people are doing their work unconsciously. And I think that's what we're all here today to try to change. But the third reason that I probably would not have believed you 15 years ago if you told me that I'd be speaking today is because 15 years ago I couldn't imagine much future for myself at all, because I was 20 years old, I was really young, and my first love had just died, which was a shock and a tragedy. And in the weeks, months after his death, I was experiencing the whole range of huge emotions that you experience when you lose someone. The anger, the anguish, the despair, which luckily for me had been very unfamiliar emotions up until that point. I had been pretty lucky, pretty happy-go-lucky, but I didn't feel like myself, and I didn't like that after he died. And then about 3 weeks to the day after he passed away, my doorbell rang, and I opened the door. Whoever rang the doorbell was gone. The delivery person was gone. But on my stoop was a beautiful little flower arrangement. It was nothing huge. It was nothing magnificent. But to me, it was so special. And it made me feel this incredible emotion that I had lost touch with. And that emotion was joy. And in that moment, I became a little bit of a flower joy addict. I wanted desperately, of course, I desperately wanted that feeling for myself, but I also wanted to share it if I could. To share flowers with other people, to celebrate their highs or soothe their lows as that little flower arrangement had done for me. And when I think back on that moment now, I think I recognize it as the start of my flower journey, but also as the moment that I started teaching myself that despite something very awful, I could create something beautiful. And I think this is meaningful for all of us here today, because whether it's a personal tragedy that inevitably will befall us, or, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this, but the huge global and social problems that we're all facing, it's really important to have these moments to teach ourselves, okay, in the face of something awful, I can change it. Because put very simply, I think the world is a mess. I think there's a lot we can do about it, though. And sometimes when I think about the problems of the world, we all have the problems that those macro level problems that we think about a lot or a little. Sometimes in the face of those problems, I feel the way I felt in those weeks after my boyfriend's death, like, throwing up my hands in despair and going, oh my God, what can I do about it? But over the last 15 years, I've been slowly teaching myself, or trying to teach myself, how to say, okay, so what can I do about it? And I think this is the mark of a conscious entrepreneur. I think this is something that all of us who are here today and who are talking today have in common. Seeing a big challenge as an opportunity, not getting frozen in indecision. Of course, we all get frozen in moments, but not getting permanently stuck in indecision. And taking steps, however small, to do something about it. My own steps have been very circuitous. I want to tell you a little now about my flower journey. Keeping in mind this idea of starting somewhere, even if you dream big, starting small and starting somewhere. So after I got that condolence bouquet and I, as I said, became a bit of a flower joy addict, I went to work at a local flower shop. I begged every flower shop in my college town to give me a job. I said, I'll clean your toilets, I'll sweep your floors, I'll do whatever you want. And I found this amazing woman who took me in and taught me what she knew for 2 years. But after 2 years of that, I realized I'm not cut out to be a florist. Not for the work of it, not for the drama of it. So then I went and did other things for a while, always with flowers in the back of my mind, wondering, okay, how could I get back to the flowers? Then in 2011, I read this incredible book by an author named Amy Stewart. She's a journalist, and she had gone around the world and basically looked at each piece, each step of the flower supply chain, and wrote about who are the breeders, who are the producers, who are the brokers and wholesalers and transporters, who are the buyers of flowers. And I don't know if you can tell on this slide, but the subtitle of her book is The Good, the Bad, and the Beautiful of the Floral Industry. And the bad was the piece that really caught my attention. I had never thought until reading that book about all of the problems in the floral industry. Like many of our global commodities, it has a ton of sustainability issues, the floral industry. And so I got really curious about what is this dark side, and also about the business of flowers. When I was working in the flower shop, I was only thinking about the flowers that were in front of me, not realizing there's this whole business behind it. And I was getting, as it turned out, more and more interested in business. So I came here to Finland in 2016 to get my business degree. And I thought, okay, now maybe here's the chance for me to study this a little more intently, to study the flower supply chain and get to know this big agribusiness behind flowers. And I had the opportunity in 2018 to go to Ecuador to do the research for my master's thesis, to interview really small-scale flower farmers who were producing flowers for export and to learn their stories. And when I was talking to those families and those communities, I saw very firsthand some of these sustainability issues that are plaguing the floral industry. And they're not unfamiliar issues if you've been thinking about sustainability issues in fashion, which we'll hear more from Pukraj. If you've been thinking about our technology we buy, you're probably thinking about some of these supply chain issues. But they're plaguing the flower industry too. Today, the truth is that there's no such thing as a sustainable flower, at least not a commercially produced one. And that's because they're super resource intensive to produce, taking land and water that could otherwise be put towards local crops or other kinds of resources. Harmful chemicals. Of course, flowers are really delicate products, so in order to grow them and get them to last, you need a lot of pesticides and fungicides, at least in a commercial growing environment. And that, of course, has terrible implications for the land where they're grown, but also for the people who are growing these flowers. You may have read recently for Women's Day or for Valentine's Day some exposés that get written every year on the problems for flower laborers, but they're often working long hours in difficult conditions without a lot of access to labor unions, and without fair pay. Add to that the high carbon footprint of flowers, either growing them in greenhouses or transporting them across the world. There's a lot of single-use plastics being used in packaging. I mean, clearly the issues just add up. So I was seeing these in Ecuador, and then when I came back to Finland, I started working at a flower wholesaler, really getting interested in that side of the business. So I had talked to the producers, and then I wanted to learn about the process of selling the flowers. And working at that flower wholesaler, I saw a new sustainability issue up close and personal, and that was the issue of flower waste. So that's flowers that are getting grown and getting transported around the world and then getting thrown away because they get too old or too damaged before they reach consumers. Does anybody have a guess of like what percentage of flowers get thrown away? Not 70, not 30. 40%. And this, of course, is occurring all across the supply chain. This doesn't mean that the flower shop you shop at is throwing away 40% of their flowers. This is, flowers that get thrown away on the farms because they don't meet basic quality standards. This is flowers that get thrown away in transit because they get damaged or they get too warm. But this is also at the retail and wholesale level. So talking to flower shops and retailers here in Helsinki, they're throwing away anywhere between 2 and 20%. And that's a really wide and vague number because a lot of people in the floral industry don't have really good inventory tracking. But anecdotally, this is what we have heard. So coming face to face with this flower waste problem was an interesting time for me because this was 2018, I had been for over 10 years wanting to work in the flower industry. I knew that I wanted to do something with flowers. And I had a lot of ideas. I had tried the flower shop. When I was in Ecuador, I had this idea about working with flower farming cooperatives. I had this idea when I got back of trying to import Ecuadorian roses to Finland to create more buyers for the farmers that I had met. But in all of those ideas, I felt a little out of my lane. It just didn't feel like the right fit for me. But when I saw that flower waste, I thought, okay, here is something I can do something about. You have probably heard the phrase, happy as a pig in shit. Well, I am the pig and they are my shit. I thought I don't know why I thought this, but I felt like here's something that I can influence. I can do things to prevent the flower waste from happening in the first place, and then when it happens, I can try to do something good with it. Even so, there were lots of iterations of this flower rescuing idea. So in the beginning, the first idea that we had with my friend Saravanan was to create actually a tech for-profit solution. Many of you have probably heard of Rescue Club here in Helsinki, so we thought we could do the same thing that they're doing for food, but with flowers. So we built a prototype of an app that would help florists track their inventory and then offload old or damaged flowers at a discount. But it turns out they weren't very interested, the florists. So after a few months of shopping this around, we pivoted and we went totally analog. We went to this model that I had seen a nonprofit in the US doing before we moved to Finland, and they were it was called the Bloom Project. It was this beautiful organization taking old flowers, cleaning them up and donating them on. So we thought, let's try that here in Helsinki. So I pitched it to the wholesaler where I was working. I said, let's do a pilot after Christmas when there's sure to be a lot of flower waste. And it was a huge success. I recruited my friends, some of them, I think some of you in this room may have been at the first FloweRescue, or at one of the first. Another friend connected us with an elder care home where she had volunteered, and we got together after Christmas and took like 6,000 flowers that were going to go into the trash and sent them on to this care home. And speaking of pigs in shit, I mean, it was a disaster. It was a huge flower mess, but it was so fun. I loved it. The volunteers loved it. The 80 folks who lived at this care home loved it. And their nurses loved it. The staff loved having a time to come together and do something beautiful. So that's the idea that stuck. And in the beginning, we only did it after the big event, so after Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. But summer 2019 came around, and I was still throwing away a lot of flowers at the wholesaler and realizing, okay, we could be doing this all the time. So we started meeting once a week with volunteers to sort through the flowers and donate them on. And we've been doing that ever since, except for about 6 weeks in March, April 2020, when the lockdown first came. And we took those weeks to clarify mission and vision, write some bylaws, nod to Minna, who put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that process. And here's what we came up with. So our vision at FloweRescue is to ensure that no flower goes to waste before bringing joy to someone. Because after all, what is the point of these flowers other than to celebrate or to soothe? And our mission is two-part. So we have the environmental part of our mission, which is to address and spark dialogue about waste and other sustainability challenges in the floral industry. And the social part, which is to connect people through the beauty and joy of flowers. And our aim in this is to get flowers to people who wouldn't otherwise get to enjoy them. So people who don't have the financial resources or who are somehow having difficulty with access. Maybe they live in institutions, maybe they live in isolation. So we always donate the flowers, we never sell them. Our basic model is to collect these Haviki flowers or surplus flowers. In the beginning it was just from this wholesaler, but now we're also collecting them from flower shops and after events like weddings and corporate events. And then we collect them all, then we rescue them. So we sort through them, composting. We do compost a lot of the flowers, what's really old or really broken or really moldy. But then what we can save, we clean and we refresh, and then we donate. So today we have 23 partners that we donate to every month. Elder care homes, palliative care, refugee serving organizations, youth serving organizations. And it used to be that we would bring the flowers all ready-made into bouquets, which was lovely. But we've also been realizing that the best impact or the best effect of a flower comes when you actually get to do something with it yourself. So more and more these days we take the flowers loose, and then with whoever's receiving them, we sit down, we tell stories, we create something beautiful together. In the numbers, our impact has been about 90,000 flowers rescued so far, a number that we're very proud of, yet there are about 500,000 rescuable flowers every year just in Helsinki, we estimate, so there's still a long way to go. All of this has been thanks to 450 incredible volunteers who, like Suki and like Minna, have served on our board. Others who come to help collect the flowers or rescue them or deliver them. And I think people come for the flowers, but they stay because of the community, because of coming to a place where we're talking about conscious flower consumption, where we're all going, okay, we love flowers, but we don't feel good about buying them. So how can we, if we want to have flowers in our lives, how can we do it more consciously? And I actually don't talk a lot about that today, but if you want some tips later, I'm happy to share them. And we have served a lot of people with these flowers. Just in 2022, we donated about 2,000 bouquets and had 360 people participate in our workshops. There's still a long way to go. So especially this year in 2022 with the board, we're working on, okay, what's next? And these are kind of some of the 3 big projects coming up. Scaling for us means something very different than it means for like a tech startup, for example. But for us, scaling is figuring out how to distribute impact. So rather than having to be on site all the time, we're now training people who serve our target audiences, so nurses in care homes or youth workers or the people doing good work in the community to incorporate flowers in what they do so that FloweRescue can just become more of a conduit for the flowers. We're also thinking more about upcycling, so rather than just diverting these flowers from the bin, figuring out ways to actually reuse the flower waste. We've had some cool tests like turning waste flower stems into paper, There was a really cool designer who made some flower leather with some flower waste. So we're trying to jumpstart some more projects like that. And we're also trying to make the FloweRescue model available to anyone who would be interested, because FloweRescue started inspired by another model. And nothing here is rocket science, right? It's some lonely flowers and some lonely people, put them together, see what happens. But we'd like to make some of our lessons learned available. So that's what we're working on this year. And I'm really confident that we can do it, because you may have noticed that in the beginning I was talking about I, and now I am talking about we, because now there is this community around FloweRescue looking at these problems in the floral industry, looking at these global problems and going, okay, so what can we do about it? And welcome to join us. There's lots of ways to get involved with FloweRescue as a volunteer. We have a drop-in bouquet making event coming on the 31st of this month, and you can find more information about that on our social media. We're semi-active on Facebook, much more active on Instagram. And I am also very glad to be in touch. I think today we're all here to say what we can help with and what we might need help with. I think if you're looking to get some advice or some sparring partner on community engagements or partnerships, I'm happy to help with that. And of course, I always need help rescuing flowers and working on our replication strategy. Thank you.